Every day, you are surrounded by noise. Not just the literal sounds of traffic, conversations, notifications, and endless media, but the constant mental chatter that never seems to stop. Thoughts repeating themselves, worries looping in circles, doubts whispering louder than truth, desires shouting over intuition. This noise is not accidental. It is the natural byproduct of living in a world that constantly demands your attention. Everything is designed to pull you outward, to distract you from the one voice that truly matters, the voice of your higher self. Your higher self is not far away. It is not some distant part of you that lives in another realm, accessible only through special rituals or rare moments of silence. It is here, now, present in every breath you take. It is the timeless aspect of you that remembers who you really are, even when you forget. It knows the path that is aligned with your deepest truth, even when your mind is tangled in fear or confusion. But here is the challenge. The higher self does not compete with noise. It does not shout louder than your doubts. It does not fight for attention the way fear and anxiety do. Its voice is steady, clear, resonant, but easily drowned out if you are only tuned into the noise. And yet, in times of intensity, in moments when you are pulled off course, the higher self will scream through the noise. Not because it suddenly changes its nature, but because your life circumstances create cracks in the wall of distraction, moments where the truth bursts through whether you are ready or not. The world has trained you to listen outward, to compare, to conform, to seek validation, to look for signs of worthiness in other people's approval, to measure success by standards that are not your own. This creates a constant feedback loop of noise. You are scrolling through images, listening to voices, measuring yourself against a million false standards. And in that loop, the higher self is easily dismissed. It feels too quiet, too inconvenient, too unrealistic compared to the demands of daily survival and social pressure. But here is the paradox. The more you ignore it, the louder the dissonance grows. The noise becomes unbearable not because the world is louder, but because you are further away from alignment with that deeper knowing. You can distract yourself with entertainment, with achievements, with endless activity, but the void remains. The quiet ache that says, "This isn't it." That ache is the higher self, screaming through the noise. Many people think the higher self will speak in grand visions, lightning bolts of clarity, or miraculous revelations. And yes, sometimes that happens, but more often, it speaks through subtler channels. The gut feeling that something is off, even when it looks perfect on paper. The exhaustion you feel when you are forcing a path that is not yours. The inexplicable peace you feel when you take a step in the right direction, even if it terrifies you. The synchronicities that appear when you align with truth. The dreams, insights, or sudden inspirations that break through when you stop overthinking. The higher self is always speaking. The question is, are you listening? When you consistently ignore that voice, life has a way of amplifying the lesson. Opportunities slip away. Relationships that are misaligned collapse. Circumstances push you into discomfort until you have no choice but to listen. This is not punishment, it is guidance. The higher self is not here to scold you. It is here to redirect you, to wake you up, to keep you aligned with your truth. The pain you feel when you are off course is not evidence of failure. It is evidence that your higher self refuses to abandon you, even when you abandon yourself. This is why so many people describe a breaking point in their lives as the moment everything changed. Because when the noise becomes unbearable, the voice of the higher self finally cuts through. And once you hear it, you cannot unhear it. The truth is, tuning into your higher self is not about escaping the world. It is not about rejecting responsibility, withdrawing from relationships, or living in isolation. It is about learning to live in the noise without being consumed by it. You cannot control the external world, but you can control your signal. You can learn to recognize the difference between the static of fear and the resonance of truth. You can practice aligning with the voice that is steady even when the world is chaotic. And this changes everything. Because once you begin listening, once you begin trusting, the need for external validation diminishes. The endless loop of comparison breaks. You stop trying to chase approval, and you start living in resonance with your deepest truth. That is freedom. That is power. And that is the beginning of living guided by your higher self. So here is the invitation. Begin noticing the moments when the noise is loudest. Noticing the endless scrolling, the restless mind, the loop of self-doubt. And instead of fighting the noise, ask yourself, what is the voice beneath this? Because no matter how overwhelming the surface becomes, the deeper voice is always there. Waiting, patient, unmoved by chaos, calling you back again and again until you remember who you are. And when you do, when you finally choose to listen, you will realize your higher self has been screaming through the noise all along. Not in anger, but in devotion. Not to punish you, but to bring you home. The noise of life is not just what surrounds you, it is what you have absorbed. Over time, you carry layers of other people's voices inside your own mind. Parents, teachers, peers, society, culture, all of them leave imprints. They tell you what success should look like, what happiness should feel like, what path is worth walking. But the truth is this, much of that noise was never yours to begin with. The higher self speaks with clarity, but clarity is often drowned in the storm of expectations. You feel pulled between what you truly want and what you were told to want. This tug-of-war creates confusion. You begin doubting yourself, questioning whether your inner voice is reliable, wondering if it is safer to follow the crowd. Yet here is the paradox. No matter how much you comply with the noise, peace never arrives. You can win every external prize, achieve every milestone that others applaud, and still feel the emptiness. That emptiness is not failure. It is the higher self screaming, "This is not it." One of the greatest challenges in hearing the higher self is distinguishing it from false signals. Fear masquerades as logic. Doubt disguises itself as caution. Social conditioning shows up as common sense. The higher self, however, does not operate through fear. It does not shame you. It does not diminish you. It speaks in resonance. You know it not because it shouts, but because something deep inside you recognizes it as truth. Think of a time when you made a decision that didn't make sense on paper but felt absolutely right. That was your higher self guiding you. Or remember the moments when you ignored that guidance and later realized you knew the outcome all along. That was the higher self speaking before you overruled it with noise. The more you practice recognizing this difference, the clearer it becomes. The higher self is never frantic, never desperate, never rooted in scarcity. Its frequency is steady. Many people say, "I can't hear my higher self. I've tried, but it's silent." But silence is not absence. Silence often means you are tuned to the wrong channel. Imagine trying to hear a radio broadcast while stuck between two frequencies. All you get is static. The station is broadcasting, but you aren't tuned in. The same is true here. The higher self does not stop speaking. The issue is that you have been trained to listen only to the loudest voice, the fears, the doubts, the judgments. Compared to that, the higher self feels subtle, almost invisible. But subtle does not mean weak. Subtle often means deeper. And when life disrupts your patterns, when relationships collapse, careers shift, or routines break, the static momentarily clears. That's why breakdowns often precede breakthroughs. Because in the collapse of noise, you finally hear what was there all along. When you ignore the higher self long enough, the quiet guidance turns into discomfort. Discomfort grows into restlessness. Restlessness grows into pain. And eventually, life presents you with circumstances that force you to stop and pay attention. This is not cruelty. This is grace. The higher self will use any channel available to get your attention. If peace doesn't work, it will use pain. If whispers don't work, it will use storms. Not to punish, but to redirect you. The ache you feel when you're off course is not emptiness. It is fullness trapped. It is your deeper knowing pressing against the walls of distraction, demanding to be acknowledged. The noise wants you to believe you are lost. But the ache reveals you are closer to the truth than ever, because only something real could cause that level of tension. So how do you begin to truly hear? The answer is not in adding more effort, but in shifting attention. Every moment of your life is a broadcast. You are either tuned into fear or tuned into guidance. You are either amplifying the noise or aligning with the deeper signal. You can begin tuning your inner frequency through small but powerful shifts. Awareness of energy leaks. Notice when you leave conversations feeling drained, anxious, or unworthy. That is noise. Your higher self does not deplete you, it strengthens you. Observing thought patterns. Instead of believing every thought, step back. Ask, does this thought expand me or contract me? Expansion signals truth. Contraction signals noise. Following resonance. Pay attention to what feels aligned in your body, even when your mind disagrees. Resonance often defies logic. Choosing still moments within activity. Not escaping life, but pausing in it. Even a single conscious breath can shift the channel back to guidance. These are not techniques to find the higher self. They are practices to remove the interference that drowns it out. When you begin hearing and following this inner voice, alignment becomes visible. Life flows differently. Synchronicities increase. The right opportunities appear without force. This doesn't mean challenges disappear. But even in challenges, you feel a deeper assurance. You sense that something larger is guiding the process. The fear of being lost fades, because you trust the compass within. This is why the higher self matters. It is not an abstract spiritual idea. It is the most practical guidance you have. It knows where to lead you, not in vague philosophical terms, but in concrete daily steps. It knows what conversations you should step into, what environments you should leave, what actions will serve your growth. It is screaming through the noise not to complicate your life, but to simplify it. To strip away the distractions so you can live aligned with what is real. The reality is this: no matter how long you ignore it, no matter how far you wander, the higher self never abandons you. You cannot silence it. You can only distract yourself from it. But distraction is temporary. At some point in this lifetime or another, you will have to face that voice. You will have to listen. Because it is not separate from you, it is you. The deepest, truest version of you. So the choice is not whether the higher self is speaking. The choice is whether you are ready to hear it now, or whether you will postpone until the noise becomes unbearable. Either way, the voice will remain. Steady, patient, screaming, if necessary, through every layer of distraction until you remember what you already know. You are guided, you are connected, you are not lost. There is a paradox about the higher self. It is described as screaming through the noise, yet the scream is not like the world's noise. It is not violent. It does not compete with chaos by becoming louder. Its scream is one of insistence, of presence, of refusal to be erased. And this insistence shows up everywhere. When you meet someone and instantly feel resonance or resistance, that is not random. It is your higher self screaming through subtle signals. When you walk into a room and your body tightens, even though everyone else seems comfortable, that is not weakness. It is the deeper part of you shouting that something is misaligned. When you find yourself restless in the job that looks perfect on paper, or uneasy in the relationship that checks every box, that unease is not sabotage. It is your higher self reminding you that you cannot trick your own soul into silence. You have never made a decision without your higher self being present. It was there when you ignored it. It was there when you listened. And in hindsight, you often realize which moments were guided and which were controlled by noise. Think about the crossroads in your life. Some you approached logically, carefully weighing pros and cons. Yet something felt off. And later, you discovered the decision led to struggle. Other times, you acted impulsively against advice, against data, simply because something inside said, do it. And it worked. That is the map. The more you review your life with honesty, the more you see the pattern. Every step aligned with the higher self-created expansion. Every step taken from fear, pressure, or noise created contraction. It was never punishment. It was feedback. The scream is always feedback. But here is the question. If the higher self is always present, why do so many of us struggle to trust it? The answer lies in conditioning. From a young age, you were taught that authority is outside of you. You were told to obey teachers, listen to leaders, respect the rules, follow the system. You were rewarded for compliance, punished for questioning. Slowly, you learned that external validation mattered more than internal knowing. This is why, even as adults, people distrust their own instincts. They dismiss intuition as irrational. They downplay inner certainty as wishful thinking. They silence their knowing in favor of statistics, opinions, or authority. But the truth is, every external voice is filtered through someone else's experience. Only the higher self carries your direct path. That is why following others blindly creates dissonance. Their path is not your path. Their map is not your map. You can ignore the scream for years, even decades. You can bury yourself in work, relationships, distractions. You can numb with busyness, with entertainment, with routine. But ignoring comes with a cost. The cost is waking up one morning and realizing that the life you are living is not truly yours. The job you fought for, the home you built, the relationships you invested in, they may all look perfect, yet they feel hollow. Because deep inside, you know they were chosen by the noise, not the voice. This realization can feel devastating. But it is also liberating. Because once you admit the truth, you cannot go back to sleep. The scream has done its work. It has broken the spell of noise. When people finally realize they have been living from distraction, they often rush to fix it with more distraction. They search for more books, more teachers, more techniques, more methods. And while learning has value, the trap is believing that someone else holds the answer. But the higher self is not found in accumulation. It is revealed in subtraction. Removing what does not belong. Peeling away what is false. Listening instead of seeking. This is why so many spiritual teachings emphasize simplicity, not because complexity is wrong, but because clarity requires space. The more clutter you remove, the more obvious the voice becomes. One of the most overlooked aspects of hearing the higher self is the body. Your body is not separate from this guidance. It is the most immediate translator of the voice within. Notice how your body reacts in certain environments. Do your shoulders tense? Does your breath shorten? Do you feel a weight in your chest? That is not random biology. That is the higher self using the body as an amplifier. Likewise, when you are aligned, your body softens. Your breath deepens. You feel lighter, even in uncertainty. You may not have all the answers, but you sense that you are on the right path. The mistake many make is dismissing these signals as just stress or just nerves. But the body often knows long before the mind admits it. To hear the scream of the higher self, Pay attention to the whispers of the body. Even when you hear the voice clearly, fear arises. Because following the higher self often means leaving behind what is familiar. It asks you to step away from the approval of others, to risk judgment, to face uncertainty. This is why many resist. The noise of the world promises safety, even if it is suffocating. The voice within promises freedom, but freedom feels terrifying when you have built your life on false foundations. Yet here is the truth. The cost of ignoring the voice is greater than the cost of following it. The pain of staying misaligned will always outweigh the discomfort of change. And once you take the first step, life begins to rearrange itself around your truth. You may not know where the path leads. You may not have the map. But the higher self never asks you to see the entire journey. It only asks you to trust the next step. That next step might be leaving a situation that drains you. It might be saying yes to something that excites you, even if it terrifies you. It might be admitting that the life you've built no longer reflects who you are becoming. When you take that step, something remarkable happens. The scream softens. The noise loses power. Guidance becomes easier to hear. Because alignment generates momentum. Each step creates clarity for the next. This is the hidden certainty. You do not need to see everything. You only need to trust what you already know deep inside. At its core, the journey of hearing the higher self is not about becoming someone new. It is about returning to what you always were before the noise covered it. You were born with this connection intact. As a child, you lived closer to it. You followed joy naturally. You expressed truth without fear. Over time, conditioning pulled you away. But the voice never left. It waited, patiently, relentlessly. And now, in this moment, it is still waiting. Still screaming through the noise. Still offering you the choice. Will you continue obeying distraction, or will you return to what has always been inside you? Because the scream is not against you, it is for you. It is the sound of your soul demanding to be remembered. The scream of the higher self is not meant to frighten you. It is meant to awaken you. But awakening is rarely comfortable. It shakes loose the illusions you've been holding, the compromises you've been making, the ways you've silenced yourself just to fit the mold. And yet, the discomfort is not destruction, it is invitation. A call to live in alignment with the life you came here to embody. The most radical thing you can do is to stop pretending. Stop pretending the job fulfills you when every morning feels like resistance. Stop pretending the relationship is alive when your heart knows it's already gone. Stop pretending you don't hear the whisper just because it doesn't fit the plan. Pretending may buy you temporary peace with the world around you, but it robs you of peace within yourself. And the higher self will never stop calling that out. Sometimes, that call comes as exhaustion. Sometimes as restlessness. Sometimes as heartbreak. And sometimes as a quiet but unshakable knowing. This is not who I am anymore. It takes courage to admit that. Courage to say, I don't know where this will lead, but I cannot betray myself any longer. When you choose to listen, don't expect the path to be straight. The voice of the higher self rarely offers certainty in advance. It gives direction one step at a time. And that is enough. Think of how rivers carve their way through the earth. They don't flow in straight lines. They curve, twist, double back, adapt. Yet every turn is part of the journey toward the sea. Your path will feel like that. Winding. Unexpected. Sometimes even confusing. But trust this. The higher self does not lead you in circles for punishment. It leads you through experience for expansion. What feels like detour is often preparation. The scream may push you out of comfort, but it always pushes you toward truth. How do you know you are beginning to live in alignment with this voice? The signs are subtle at first, but unmistakable. You start feeling lighter even when external circumstances haven't changed. You no longer crave constant validation because you feel anchored in something deeper. Synchronicities increase. The right people, opportunities, and ideas appear without force. You find yourself saying no with more ease, not from anger, but from clarity. You begin to trust life, even in uncertainty, because you feel life is moving with you, not against you. These are confirmations. Proof that you are tuning into the frequency that has always been there. Do not imagine that once you begin listening, the noise of the world will vanish. The world will continue to shout. Distractions will still tempt you. Old patterns will try to pull you back. But here is the shift. The noise will no longer dominate you. Like background chatter in a crowded cafe, it will fade as you focus on the one voice that matters. What once felt overwhelming will become irrelevant. What once confused you will dissolve into clarity. Not because the world changed, but because you did. The ultimate purpose of hearing the higher self is not just for personal peace. It is for expression. Once you begin to align, you become a translator of that deeper wisdom into the world. Your words carry more weight. Your presence shifts the atmosphere. Your decisions ripple into others' lives. Without trying to, you become an example that inspires. Not because you are perfect, but because you are authentic. This is how the higher self works. It doesn't just transform you, it transforms everything you touch. So now the question becomes, will you keep ignoring the scream? Or will you finally answer it? Answering does not require dramatic gestures. It begins with small choices. Choosing honesty over pretension. Choosing alignment over convenience. Choosing trust over fear. Every time you do, the scream softens into a steady voice, a voice you can walk with daily. Because your higher self is not just screaming through the noise, it is inviting you into a life that feels like truth. A life where your soul is no longer hidden beneath distraction. A life where you are not just existing, but living awake. Right now, in this exact moment, your higher self is speaking. Maybe it's been whispering for months. Maybe it's been shouting for years. Maybe you've dismissed it as coincidence, or fear, or just a thought. But you know it's more than that. You can feel it. The question is not whether the voice is real. The question is, will you listen? Because once you do, life will never be the same. And that is the point.